Welcome, everyone, to the Smite Night Conquest League game between a bunch of Eedjiots versus Hati. This is taking place in our Necropolis division. My name is TJ. Alongside me is Haunting, all-star casting team that we've got lined up here with myself alongside him. It's been a long time, Haunting. I've been looking forward to this cast for a very long time. Let us know the stakes of this game.
It has been a long time, and as ever with our reunion cast, CJ, I am delighted to be here. And as you're right, stakes to this game. Neither of these teams have dropped a set heading into this week's game, which is immediately something to pay attention to. This means these two have been rising to the top. But not only that, someone is going to walk home with a bloodied nose after taking their first loss of the season from the set. And I think both teams are going to be wanting to play to preserve that record. But not only that, the winning team gets to rise up the ranks and head into the Valhalla division to end the split. So there's a fair bit on the line. There's some pride on the line, but there's also a promotion here on the line too. And it'll be interesting to see whether that affects our players at all today. Are people going to be playing safe, trying to make sure they're guaranteeing that win, or are we going to see a little bit more risk coming out, a little bit more trying to force some aggression early, try and make plays happen? People who are hungry for that promotion.
Absolutely, and just going on the back of that to lay it all out, both teams, of course, being completely undefeated. This is week number 3 of the 3-week splits that we have here in Smite Night Conquest League, so only one team will promote, the other has to wait until next time around to move on. So again, there's a lot to look forward to here, and as you say, I'm really looking forward to see how these teams want to adapt, and I believe that is going to be our cue to say that game number 1 draft is going to be ready for you on your screens very soon. A bunch of Eedjiots are going to be on your order side and Hati on the right hand side as well. And here we are, with the Season of Monsters patch as well, which still, it doesn't feel like it's even been around that long, and yet it has felt like an eternity at the same time. I don't know, only Smite seems to be able to do that, Haunting. So are we going to be seeing comfort, or are we still feeling a bit hungover from maybe the last few patches?
Well, immediately the bans here are a little bit surprising, because I would think you'd want to go into game 1 with kind of the best meeting space between comfort and meta, right? You want to have the best gods that you're able to play, but you also want to make sure that you're going to show up and execute, because this is going to be a little bit of a high pressure situation. So you don't want to have something that you're only playing for the first time or you're not comfortable on. And so seeing that Tiamat ban immediately surprised me, because that's not necessarily a god that we've been seeing at the top of these ban lists. But then seeing the Freya, the Olorun, the Habwa and such come out, that's a lot more expected for where this meta's been.
Yeah, and also seeing bans towards the magical ADCs as well. I know that with the bonus patch that we're on, shall I say, that just recently went through, that this game was played on, I believe it was some of the items being picked up by the magical ADCs did take a little bit of a hit, but clearly not enough to remove them from the banning phase. You can see Kronos, Olorun, and the Freya taken off. I mean, Sol is still available should either of these teams want to pick it, but for now, 4 assassins. 4 is that first pick over to the left-hand side, and a Maui and what looks like an early mid-lane pick for the Merlin to go for Hati.
Yeah, lots to really delve into here. Thor, really strong god, as we remember from the end of last season, but with the buffs or the changes, I suppose, that happened to Bluestone, has a very different early games before that now makes him feel like a threat from the word go. Maui, one of the strongest guardians, even with those big nerfs coming in to start the year, but still, I think a difficult one to pick, because it's a really skill testing god. So we'll have to see whether Hardy are able to do anything with this Maui. And then finally, the Merlin that we've seen locked in. Merlin's really risen to the top as this high pressure mid lane pick. Merlin was always sort of lurking in the shadows before and not quite getting there because of that hunter mid meta that we had. But now Merlin not only gets all of the same boosts that the rest of the mage class got to start Year of Monsters, but also we saw buffs to Tablet of Destinies. Is that what it's called?
Yes, Tablet of Destinies.
Tablet of Destinies recently. And Merlin is one of the best mages at stacking that item and one of the best mages at proccing that item. And because the whole mage build at the moment in the meta is all about these proccing items, Merlin just rose straight to the top of people's pick lists because of that.
Their goddess.
Yeah, and I think as well, maybe another mid lane pick that I would personally like to see as well. Whenever I think of Book of Thoth being built, stacking items, something like the Baba Yaga as well.
Mm.
Especially with how like the map dynamics sort to go, how junglers are getting really impactful really early on as well because of how like jungle changes, how teams are starting to adapt as well. The lanes being longer, they're being wider, so much more fighting going on. A bit of safety, so Merlin does get that flicker. And speaking of safety as well, Ishtar going to be the pickup as well for Hati. But meanwhile, I do want to bring up though, Haunting, the likes of this Geb and this Hercules as well. So I'm seeing a lot of flex potential that a bunch of idiots could run here.
Right. It feels like it's been an age since we've seen Geb anywhere but the support role. And whilst I do think this is a Geb support, it's not something that I necessarily like early on in this meta. I feel like early in the season, you always want to be playing for pressure. Geb's a great peel support, don't get me wrong, but pressure is not his strong suit. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I think this Hercules could be really well positioned at the moment.
Face the
You see here, as we have gone through a second period of bans as well. Of course, things do remain the same. 3 bans at the start and then 2 halfway through. So the Lancelot, the Guang Yu taken off, Agni and the Ram taken away as well, which means that for a bunch of Eedjiots, they decided to go for the Morgan Le Fay pickup as well. At mid lane, I didn't expect to see, and also an Apollo as well. So I am loving the team fighting that's going to be coming out from a bunch of Eedjiots.
Yeah, a lot of team fighting and a lot of map control too, TJ. You've got Across the Skies with Apollo, and then you've got Thor's Anvil of Dawn. Both of these having a really wide ability to control the map. It feels a little bit like there's potential for Hati to get outmaneuvered here. But at the same time, I don't know that I love Apollo ult on this new map when we're really not in a Transcendence meta. So you're going to be draining your mana to get to any fights. That said, backline is going to be in peril from the start of any team fight. You've got Cataclysm to stun them, Hercules, who is great at just tying up carries with CC, and then Morgan Le Fay, who is really good at long range poke, really good at keeping herself safe with self peel, and also continuing that CC chain, especially with the fear on her one.
Yeah, there's so many tools available for a bunch of Eedjits to play around it. I just want to lament a little bit on the Hati draft as well, is that when you're dealing with a lot of this dive coming through, I always look towards the support and the solo lane, because if they're going to be diving onto this Merlin, on towards this Ishtar, it's like, right, what? Maui and the Kukulkan, amazing engages right now, amazing team fights. But you've just got to wonder, like, are we going to be keeping them abilities behind? Because, hang on a minute, I might have to protect my Merlin, I might have to protect my Ishtar as well. There's so many ways to play it. And I think this is going to be a real good test for Hati as well to really put to the test their team play as well, in their positioning and their coordination, because a bunch of Eedjits, they just kind of feels like they pick someone and it's like, right, we're going to go kill them now.
Right. And to compound that issue that you've noticed with that composition, TJ, which I think is a really good insight, is Ishtar's dash is at its best when you're using it aggressively. And Merlin Flicker is a long cooldown and it doesn't take you particularly far. So this is a vulnerable looking backline to me.
Well, we're going to be seeing how vulnerable as we're going to hop in towards the game as well. Just to let you know that because of the replay gods that look down upon us, they've decided that we're going to be beginning this game at 3 minutes and 47 seconds into it. And immediately as well, we're going to be seeing a little bit of action. So you are going to be using your imagination here as we see what looks like a solo kill. It's Tilly GB straight in of a pick onto Sammy's Hercules as well. And that is going to equal the scoring, and it's such an unfortunate position to jump into right now because we have to infer a lot of things as well throughout this game. As Haunting, what do you think just happened here?
It looks like the classic thing where you overstep your mark and you get caught out for it, but it looks like a lot of action happening here.
Yeah, the Anvil of Dawn coming down. Apollo still up in the air as well, waiting to come down, but the CC chain is just a little bit too strong from Hati as they're able to get a second one. Apple Toast coming in from the mid lane to pick up another pick as well. So just in a matter of moments, we've gone from 0 kills to 6. Granted, we did skip, 3 minutes of the start now. Sweet's got to be very careful here. Just dancing with a little bit of death from Zozol on the Ishtar, hovering around at probably, probably what, 200, 300 HP right now. Having to be very careful.
This is a really tough position to be in as well, because as the Apollo, you don't want to back and lose that entire wave, and you already lost some XP and gold to the tower shots. But then also, you have no mana, so you have no way to keep yourself safe, which just allows Zozol to do whatever they want at that point in the map. And it's a really tough position to be in. Now you've got really desynced respawn, or not respawn, but back timers between your carry and your support. And really, it's now going to fall on Matthias to keep all of those minions away from the tower and really take some damage from the archers before Swedish gets a time to get back here and mop up that sweet golden XP.
Yeah, and it looks like as well the kills have maybe mopped up. That was a double tap. Good grief, onto Toby. Just losing a good chunk of their HP. And I wanted to take this moment there seems to be a bit of a lull state developing right now. Players going into the jungle, pick up some of that farm that's respawned, buffs, timers, and all that. So we actually maybe do get a chance to actually dive into that early start, what it could have been for now, because right now the kills at the moment, you got for a bunch of Eedjiots, it's a kill on the 4. And also a kill onto the Geb as well. Some assists in the duo lane, so we can infer, of course, that duo lane action over to the left-hand side. Right-hand, though, it seems to be the top side of the map getting most of that action, as just like Tilly does, though. 3 members jumping on, an Anvil of Dawn to come down as well. Just waiting for the crash to land, and it looks like it's not going to happen where we want. Actually, Nerodi went over towards the top side, and that might be a little bit too far. Toby's here, a double dash follow as well, and the Spear of Mortal Pain will pick up that kill onto the 4. Retreat signs come round. Hati find a kill.
I really don't like that decision there, TJ, from Nerodi. It seemed like a weird angle to take anyway, as it looks like Swedish getting called out here.
The Uber did get called, and it did arrive on time. A lot better than my look with Uber drivers, I must say, recently. But hey ho, just how it is. But really nice meds coming from Swedish. Actually, the landfall. Pull back and watch yourself under a tower line when a Maui is ready for you. That was lethal there.
It certainly was, and it's building on what I was talking about in the draft phase. We saw Swedish use that ult to get out. It drains your mana pool now as Apollo, and with no Transcendence, no way of stacking or building up that mana pool in the build right now, it means that you're kind of a sitting duck once you've landed, and we saw it exploited there perfectly by ZF Sparta, just to pull him out from under the tower and get the kill down onto Swedish. A really nice execution, but I think really exploiting one of the weaknesses here. Good matchup knowledge.
Yeah, it was a pick that we brought up inside the draft as maybe, were there better options available? I know maybe it's a little bit harsh for me to be suggesting this 8 minutes in, but right now, Hati just want to fight, at least. They have this gold lead, they had this experience, and maybe a bit of the adrenaline's going as well. There's Sparta channeling the hook, but can't quite connect it onto the mid laner for a bunch of Eedjiots as well. But so much action coming from Hati, and I think a bunch of Eedjiots really just need to tone it down. But, Toby's coming in here for maybe a gank. He's going to be at least dissuaded from now. I think Swedish, it did look like it went over a ward, so he's going to be spotted out at least. So I think the Apollo is going to be okay, but I have cast a curse to people before.
It does look like Swedish wants to turn this into a fight, but with the Thor here as well, Anvil of Dawn is in play, and I'm a little bit worried.
There's the dunk. It's going to go straight down. Zozola having to leap away. Did pop the beads as well. But now the attention towards that Apollo once again. But here comes the Geb, the Cataclysm, the stun, the peel. All fantastic. Geb getting a lot of value there. Double kill going away of Narodi. And the 4 jungle really starting to get some value.
And the thing I want to bring up there, TJ, is as the important part of it, because the Anvil of Dawn was great, and we love seeing big Thor plays like that. But it was the wall that came down from the Thor afterwards that really spilled up that team fight. Nemesis is a god that mostly, and especially looking at the way that Toby's decided to build Nemesis, relies on those auto attacks to deal that damage, to get the most out of her kit. And with this build, and so by having that wall down, there's just no way to approach the Apollo, and so Nerodi is able to play peel, but also set the Apollo up to get some of that range damage in, and it works perfectly for them to turn it around and slow down this Nemesis, who was starting to pull away a little bit of a lead.
Well, there's a reason that both of these teams are undefeated right now. Both of them really highlighting their team play for all to see here. As well, this gold buff has been the subject of a lot of contention for now, but I think we have reached the points where it's just going to be teams coming up, maybe doing a bit of a handshake, walk away. All things are fine and dandy, as we want to just pull a little bit back, approaching that 10-minute mark here, and look maybe to the other side of the map as well. As we did see Sammy, unfortunately, not the most, what's the word, not the greatest moment to catch there, just immediately into game and seeing a solo kill, but it's been a rough old time for Sammy going up against this Kakulan.
It really has. I'm kind of interested to see how this matchup continues to play out. I've seen in other levels, so in the play-in tournament for SPL, I believe, Hercules were mostly building almost like Vimana. They're building the Sigil of the Old Guard, and then or Warding Sigil, and then Golden Blade to help their early clear. Because although you've got your good abilities on Hercules, they often put you in the line of fire, and so having the ability to clear a little bit more with the order attacks and use that new passive, it helps a lot. And actually, I think maybe they've been caught out a few too many times by using that dash to clear wave.
Speaking of being caught out here, the landfall looks like it wants to claim another victim, but a very good knockback from the Dragon coming out from Nighthawk. He's able to get underneath the tower as well to safety. Matthias on this Geb really putting in a shift to protect their carry. He's actually going to go very far forward for a shockwave, and it looks like, there's not going to be any follow-up damage, but that's going to be more to the issue of this Geb. He just went in for the shockwave, but there was no follow-up coming out from the mid lane. Meanwhile, Zozola goes down. I believe Narodi got another pick on the 4, and has just reset as well. 4-2-1 scoreline. That's going to feel good for the Apollo, who has been pretty bullied for most of this game.
It certainly has, yeah. We've seen a lot of attention played over to that Apollo, and I think with good reason. We talked about the weaknesses that this god has. But there we saw the Geb go back in, and I agree that it seemed like a weird decision, but I think it was almost buying time and keeping the attention of Hati in the mid lane so that the Narodi could get that kill off over in the duo lane, and it's worked a great deal. Oh, really good rollout there.
Yeah, good rollout is going to stop that as well. I was just laughing at the hook steal as well. I mean, Sparta is going to die for it, but you know what? In terms of ways to go down, just denying the Void buff away, just literally walked up, charging that hook, is what was going to happen. I know what was going to happen. The Apollo knew what was going to happen. It was almost inevitable at that point. But to see it actually just go down is like, well, that's just a feels bad, at least. So, it's going to be great for the mental as well, to have those moments and interactions inside of the game. So Apple Toast, though, wants maybe a bit more interaction with the spawn at least. He just vanishes out of the mid lane. Bunch of Eedjiots find yet another pick.
And there, I don't know that we saw the flicker used at all, but again, just caught out and burst down. And with those beads on cooldown, it was a really good observation made by a bunch of Eedjiots to set that up. And we saw really great CC there coming out from the Thor again. I think Narodi is going to be the player to watch as this game goes on.
Yeah, especially when you're looking towards, members of either of these teams to really step up and dictate that tempo. And, it has been the junglers. Toby's got 3 of their own kills, but Anvil of Dawn comes crashing down onto Zozola. The Blades of Vengeance aren't going to be getting any of that for now because, well, it's going to be a very dead Ishtar, but Narodi 6-2-1. Actually, Toby's going to blink in as well. Going to throw down the ultimate as well on towards this 4. Both members half HP. It is a 1 versus 2. Trying to go for the outplay. Going to throw up the shield as well to heal some of it back. So Sparta waiting in the wings as well to buy a bit of time. Going to go for the flank as well. Going to try and attempt this as Sparta's going to be charging up that hook as well. Re-entering the play, but the Mez comes out. Narobi with a nice use of the hammer teleport. But now, with the Aloha to teleport. Nemesis in. They're going to go for the dive. The landfall comes down as well, but they're not focusing the same target. And the 4 is able to get away. Swedish still hitting auto attacks. And it looks like Toby's able to get away. And now Zeta Sparta started this fight and now immediately wants to leave it.
It's a really odd fight that carried on there because no one really got anything from the latter half of it. There's no decision made by Zozole to start off boxing there, though, with Swedish because we saw the ward right next to where Narodi went up into that Anvil of Dawn. So Zozole had good warning that Thor was coming, but decided to stick around and fight anyway, and was just utterly obliterated. And it's allowed Swedish to gain a bit of a lead here, and I think that's going to come in handy throughout this game. But right now, the damage check is definitely being won by Hati over this boxing match.
See just the poke coming out, the shockwave knock up as well. No further action going to be. I think if going by how Sparta's been playing, maybe a bit more HP, they would have been straight in there for another engage. See Toby still looming around as well as members coming in that left-hand side jungle. I'm noticing, Nighthawk as well coming in from the row. Matthias is going to find himself in a bit of bother. The Blaze of Vengeance, but the stun Anvil of Dawn comes down. Cataclysm is going to find one. It's going to be turned around underneath the tier 1 tower as Narodi finds a pick of their own. An unstoppable streak, and Swedish once even more going to crash down towards Apple Toast. Gets a fair amount of damage down, but it's all a distraction because it looks like Gold Fury is going to be on the menu.
It is, but Matthias is very low. This is going to be a difficult one to maintain as the leash almost kills the support, and now it's Hati who are in control.
Oh, landfall. Okay, it is going to be secured at least, but what can Hati get off of this? Appletosa has picked off Matthias at least, and he's able to get away as well. As Sparta in a bit of bother as Nighthawk just chasing him down and able to confirm it with their own ability. The Gold Fury goes the way of a bunch of Eedjiots.
I think that's really important here because we've seen these teams really want to scrap, and particularly Hati. They seem to not want to let anything go without a fight. And in a game like this, you're looking to really secure the leads that you can, because if you're going to be fighting all the time, you want to gain those little advantages to make sure you're winning those skirmishes and putting your opponent behind. And so a bunch of Eedjiots, by getting the Gold Fury there, put more gold in the pockets of their carries, help to put them ahead in the damage race. We're seeing those leads start to build, full item completed for Swedish, over half an item for Zozole, half a level lead for Nighthawk in the mid lane. These things are going to start to add up. So these skirmishes that Hati are committing to every time they see a member of a bunch of Eedjiots on the map, those are going to start to continue to fall the way of a bunch of Eedjiots as they just get to put a finger on the scale each time. And I think that's going to be really important as this game goes on.
You can see more action inside of this left-hand lane. For now, just really showing up. But Swedish is going to be feeling a lot more comfortable as well, and able to win out these boxing matches. So Matthias over the right-hand side as Tilly with the Salmon Leap is able to just go over the rollouts, and Sammy unfortunately does not connect with the knockup. But the stun from Nairobi at least will be there, but it's only a little bit of splint damage. So Tilly, I think Tilly's going to be feeling very, very fine with that one. But a lot of members in the right-hand side of this jungle, a bunch of Eedjiots really hunting for something.
They are. I think they're looking for a pick to try and cement those two objectives they pulled. So we saw them get the Gold Fury and then the Pyromancer. And I think by getting an extra pick there, you really start to cement that and get to start.
Oh no, that backfired. Apple Toaster was looking to take the Aloha to teleport back to ZF Sparta, but the Cataclysm interrupted it and just ended up being bursted down. And now the Maui will fall as well. Swedish enters the fray from left-hand side using that global presence. And even though Tier 1 Tower went down to Hati, a bunch of Eedjiots will at least trade it inside of the mid lane. The bricks start to fall as the map will open up a little bit more.
The Tier 1 tower melted. I thought it still had about half health on it, and it just disappeared in one push. Oh, really good ult there from
wow. Nighthawk with the maximum range ultimate as well. Very deceptive, actually, the range on the Morgan Le Fay ultimate. It always feels like it's at least 2 postcodes away when it feels like it should be 1 postcode away. But hey-ho, that's just how it falls, I guess. And just looking now, haunting at where the players look to be turning their attention. Gold Fury was taken just a few moments ago, so we have got a respawn coming over there. The Fire Giants available. As Zola using their abilities that are also available to them, but it's not going to really be any meaningful follow-up. But actually, a bunch of Eedjiots may want to get out of this one because it looks like Hati wants to engage this fight as the Anvil of Dawn will be used to purely escape from this one and might be able to at least get to the Tier 1 tower. But actually holding it in the air, I was thinking maybe I'm going to try and turn that one around with a really huge dunk on multiple members. But for now, just going to play it safe. But that's a big cooldown to lose here.
It really is, and especially with this kind of posturing that's going on from Hati, you have no one to really pin someone down. But good pullback there means that a lot of tower shots are going to be taken.
Oh, Matthias is going to blink in with the Cataclysm. It does find onto 3 members. The Landfall comes out to knock back the Geb. At least loads of low health bars coming out. Matthias is on the hunt with the Roller. Has got that Shockwave as well with the blink forward. And the Hammer will claim another victim. Matthias gets the first pick as well. Looking at these abilities, you can see that Toby did try to go for the dive, but was knocked back immediately. Matthias just seems like this raid boss. No one can deal with the Geb. And now Swedish is here. Going to come down from the ultimate and pick off some members. To flicker away will avoid that line ability, and he's going to get the first one onto the Merlin. Tilly retreating underneath the tier 2 tower. Anvil of Dawn is available once again, and it will claim yet another victim. The tower falls just as well to add insult to injury. A bunch of Eedjiots, a crazy fight, but they find 4.
A really crazy fight, and if the audience at home want a way of keeping track of how long that fight went on for, TJ, what did we see to start it off? Anvil of Dawn to escape, and then we saw a second Anvil of Dawn to end the entire fight. So that fight went on for the entirety of the cooldown of Thor Ultimate. And for me, what it comes down to is that fight was the whole game we've seen so far in a microcosm. Hati get aggressive, they get some low health bars, they maybe get a pick using that Landfall Ultimate, and then they stick around. And we've seen this over and over again. They play aggressive into a bunch of Eedjiots jungle. They stick around too far, and they just get picked apart on the back end of these fights. And I'm really concerned now that this is going to be how they lose this game.
You can see just the sustain coming out from Night Tank. He is able to get away, but, you know, that healing coming out from the ultimate really keeping the mid laner alive, and you know, Matthias just able to zone out from the Pyromancer by just purely existing. But yes, I 100% agree with you there, Haunting. You know, Hati just being punished for their over aggression. I feel like maybe they're trying to force a little bit too much. Maybe they think, okay, we're starting to lose control of this game. We need to pull it back. We need to grab the collar and just yank it back towards us and try and get a little bit of semblance of control. But a bunch of Eedjiots are more than happy to oblige, it seems. Their comp is so good at being dove upon, thanks to Matthias, who's playing pretty lights out on this Geb.
Yeah, Matthias's play is pretty lights out, and then we've seen a bunch of good Dragon Slites come out from Nitank as well. Swedish is on Apollo, who can stay pretty safe too. It's really hard to pick off these backliners, and then the way that these backliners are playing, they have a great job at hunting down the stragglers in the waters that Hati are leaving at the end of all of these fights. You've got a pretty mobile ADC, you've got a very mobile assassin, and it's just turning into every fight. The cleanup squad is there for a bunch of Eedjiots, and it's working again and again, which is why we've seen this big gulf between these two teams. As the early fighting was happening, there's a pretty even gold difference between them, and now a bunch of Eedjiots, almost 10,000 gold ahead. This is getting to a state where the game is almost entirely out of your hands for Hati.
I want to point out as well, it feels like this lead that has grown. Just look at the slash lines down on the scoreboard, right? So I'm going to start with Narodi, right? 9-2-5. Nitank 3-0-7. No, Matthias, Swedish, the duo lane 3-3-11, 3-2-11. Sammy has not been involved in any of this.
Nope.
Just playing Smite right-hand lane edition, not the DLC to get involved anywhere else. So this is 4 members of a bunch of Eedjiots just running the show. So I cannot wait to see when Sammy actually does get involved. I think we do want to see a little bit of kill to participation. They're sitting on 2 goose eggs and only that 1 death at the start of the stream as well. It's a bit of a feels bad, but it's got to be, you got to feel bad for Hati as well. It's like they've near enough been playing 4 versus 5 for the past 23 minutes, and look at what's happened.
Well, I think what it comes down to is a bunch of Eedjiots perhaps identified that Sammy was losing early in the game, so just leave Sammy over there, farm, get a lead, and now Sammy does have a lead and could be an impact member of these fights.
Good lord, Toby just vanished as well. Sweetie, she's going to find yet another pick as well. Wanting to start the Fire Giant, but it was a turn and it was a burn. Landfall, we're hit onto 3 members, but it's just going to be a death sentence for ZF Sparta. A double kill for the 4, and now they're going to turn their attention back towards the Fire Giants.
Interesting decision here. So that fight, TJ, was all about the same things that we've identified time and time again. How do you use these mobility tools to get onto the back line? And we saw it work out perfectly. We saw the great Ample of Dawn. We saw the Apollo get involved, get stuck in, get those early kills down. And once this composition from Hati starts to get torn apart, it's really hard for them to do anything about it. And for me, I think a lot about what you said during this draft phase. The peel tools aren't really there, and so their backline is suffering. They can't put their damage out, and a bunch of Eedjiots are just able to capitalize by taking this comp apart surgically, and it's turned into a really successful formula for them. I thought they'd try and get a little bit more pressure there onto mid Phoenix after the kills, but I guess they didn't like the wave state particularly much. But now with the Fire Giant buff, these towers and Phoenixes are looking mighty tasty for a bunch of Eedjiots.
They're going to start crumbling down. Hati, to be fair, we're dealing with it into a siege as well. They're going to be thankful that they do have a fairly decent wave clear, all things considered as well. So they may be able to hold on to their Phoenixes for quite a while as well. And actually, a full reset. I don't think Sammy got the memo here. We're taking quite a quick run and a dash back towards safety, at least before they can get the reset. But I like this from a bunch of Eedjiots. We talked at the start of the broadcast that the stakes of this game as well. The winner here is promoted to the Valhalla division. The loser will have to remain in the Necropolis division for yet a couple more game weeks before their next opportunity. So for a bunch of Eedjiots, it's just play that surgically, as you said. Just stick to one thing at a time. Objective. Can we get anything off this? No. Can we reset? Yes. We'll all pull back. We'll all group together. Not giving the in work.
And it's surprising, right? Even with that little bit of miscommunication that we saw Sammy getting left behind after all of the members backed, it still didn't amount to anything for Hati. And Hati are really struggling now. It looks like difficult to make a decision on where to go on the map, and that's all part of the plan for a bunch of Eedjiots too. Once you get into this position on a game, you need to play with a tight grip to make sure that your lead doesn't play you. And look, they've just stripped all of the resources out of the jungle. There's nothing for Hati to get by stepping forward, and it's now time to fight under these Phoenixes. And it's going to be a tough siege, as you mentioned. Merlin and Ishtar have some of the best wave clear in their respective roles between them. But if the picks that a bunch of Eedjiots have been able to get in other fights or anything to go by, I think you've got to be watching eyes on this Thor for how this fight is going to start.
Yeah, it's currently in the mid lane right now. Left-hand side is going to be throwing a bunch of abilities out, including and also from the Ishtar, the Cataclysm. 4 members going to be hit back. But the landfall back on the Phoenix was quite huge from ZFC Sparta, but only if they were just a little bit further ahead in gold and damage, because a bunch of Eedjiots are more than happy to follow up. You engage onto us. No, 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 no. We are going to fight you. They will take out 3 members on the left-hand side, and they didn't even start the fight. They finished it. Second inhib is going to be the target. Another great stun coming out from the Rhodey on this 4 has been a joy to watch. Second bird drops as well, and maybe that's all they're going to need, Haunting, with just 2 inhibs down. ZFS Sparta doing what they can, but eyes on the prize. Swedish is going to take down the Titan. Game 1 goes the way of a bunch of Eedjiots.
What was really interesting to me about that final fight under the Phoenix, and really this ended with that last fight. There was more stuff going on, but for me, it all came down to that last team fight. Hati had great setup. They used that landfall so well. It was one of the most conventional fights that we saw a bunch of Eedjiots play. So frequently throughout the game, we saw them using the Thor and the Apollo to maneuver around, get these pincers, and essentially play like a double assassin comp on the backline. And I kind of needed to, right? Because their solo laner was playing off in the solo lane all game. So they needed those double dive threats. And then in that last fight, landfall comes down, Matthias gets out of dodge, and we see Swedish actually pull back, play like a backliner instead of trying to play up in their faces. It turns into an effective kill after good poke onto the front line. And then Sammy, who's just been dunked into the backline by landfall, is able to start pressuring out the damage dealers, and it all comes together for a bunch of Eedjiots.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be, I could just imagine the morale going into game number 2 as well, as we look a little bit further ahead towards the set, because this is, of course, a best of 3. So Hati, do have an opportunity to turn it around. They will have to do it the hard way, though. A reverse sweep will await them, but a bunch of Eedjiots really have thrown down the gauntlet, Haunting, and it's going to be quite fun to watch how Hati owner responds. But we're going to wait on that for just a few moments. We're going back to a BR back screen, and we will bring you game number 2 in just a few moments.
I didn't feel anything for you. You don't believe me, but yes, it's true. Still now I don't know why you go through all that just to try and bring things back to how they used to be. But forget it, cause now I'm free. You had your life planned to a T, but from now on you'll go without me. Yeah, dealing with a psychopath. How did you think that it would end? Now before you feel his wrath. Insanity is just around the bend. He has his guns and lies in disguise. It's just something that you can make. You had to deal with a psychopath. This is the last might be the end. He had you right where he wanted you, and I'm sure that you knew it too. You played right into his hands while I buried my head in the sands. You should have stopped when you had the chance, but he took you to your last dance. You know I'm not gonna lie. When it happened, all I did was die. Yeah, dinner with a psychopath. How did you think that it would end? Now long before you feel his wrath. Insanity is just around the bend. He has his guns and lies in disguise. It's just something that you can make. Yeah, deal with a psychopath. This is the last might be the end. Yeah, deal with a psychopath. How did you think that it would end? How long before you feel his wrath? Insanity is just around the bend. He has his constant lies in disguise. It's just something that you can make. Yeah, deal with a psychopath. This is the last might be the end. This is the last might be the end. This is the last might be the end. How long till I see you again? How long till I hear your voice? I don't wanna lose you again. I wish I had a choice. It always eases my pain, keeps my mind in tune. But like all good things, it's gone too soon. It's the end of the road, I can see it coming. It's the end of the road for It's the end of the road for me. It's the end of the road, I can see it coming. It's the end of the road for me. It's the end of the road, can you feel it crumbling? It's the end of the road, can you see the debris? Come on, I'll lose my mind, running out of time. Come on and start a fight, come on and cross the line. Just have a think about what I will do to you. I'll make you see red, I'll turn you black and blue.
And welcome back, everyone, to Smite Night Conquest League. This is our coverage of a bunch of Eedjiots versus Hati in a Necropolis Division, basically promotion show-off between these two teams. The winning team gets promoted to Valhalla. The loser has to stay behind. Now, we just saw game number one haunting a bunch of Eedjiots. It was a bit of I would say a slow start. A lot of action, but going blow for blow, and then this lead started to grow from a bunch of Eedjiots, and all of a sudden Hati just kind of got smothered out of the game.
Absolutely. Anytime there was aggression, they had that thrown back in their faces. And I feel like for me, Hati just wanted to stick around in these skirmishes for way too long and didn't have the same kind of tools available to them that a bunch of Aegis had. And all of this aggression just got turned back in their faces. And it spiraled out of control for them as the game went on. And we saw that towards the end. 20 plus kills for a bunch of Eedjiots, only 8 for Hati, and the gold lead reflected that they just had the game under control and they were there to just take it away from them.
Yeah, there was that moment inside of the duo lane. I want to say about 16 to 17 minutes in where it looked like Hati kind of committed a full rotation over towards the duo side, looking for Sweeter on the Apollo, and the counter engage was just incredible. Like, Anvil of Dawn came out to get away, and then the fight went on for so long that Anvil of Dawn came back online to then re-engage and find more kills. And if that didn't sum up game number one, I don't know what will. So my question to you, Haunting, as we go into the draft for game number two, where do we start with Hati? Is this a draft problem that needs to be solved, or is this more of a team play?
I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, and I know that sounds like a cop out, but I really do think that there are ways that they can patch their draft to help it. Because I don't think their draft was bad in terms of power picks. They had a lot of gods that are high up on those tier lists, but they didn't necessarily mesh together the way that you would want. And then there were ways that they played out these skirmishes that I think need improvement too heading into game number two. But let's start with the draft because that's where we're at.
Yeah, so
frontline was strong, but you need ways of making space and creating safety for your backliners, and that just didn't happen, especially when you've got the kind of mobility that a bunch of Aegis had. So they needed some way of keeping those backliners out of the line of fire. And then on top of that, they need to come up with some way of working out where they want to play throughout each period of the game. You had good pushing lanes on the side lanes, but it didn't feel like the jungler was necessarily being best utilized to make an impact there, playing much more around mid or getting to these skirmishes a little bit late. So maybe picking a jungler that best supports one of these side lanes better to make sure they get a lead. But ensuring that you get a lead somewhere on the map and being able to push that, I think, is going to be the start of things for Hati. but then keeping that in such a way that you can transition into a good late game team fight is going to be super important as well.
Yeah, maybe just playing around that lead, because you did have Tilly GB, who had, by the looks of things, that opening 10 minutes, just bullying out this Hercules throughout the time. But we never really saw any of that, of the Kukulin getting involved early on. So what I'm getting here, Haunting, is that there is loads of little tweaks to be made, but nothing really too drastic, shall I say, as we go into the main meat and bones of the draft. The bans coming out here. We highlighted that there was a lot of mobility coming out from a bunch of Eedjiots. So I was thinking, are we going to see a ban towards the Apollo? Are we seeing the 4 ban? The 4 is going to be taken away. So just to round off the rest of the bans, of course, the Magical ADCs, Chronos, Olaron, Freya all gone, Herbois, and this Tiamat as well. Double bans in both of these games. But Ao Kwang was banned in game 1, is now left open, and is going to be picked up by Hati.
Yeah, it's a really strong pick at the moment in this meta. It perhaps, though, discourages you away from some of the other top picks. So you mentioned it in game number 1, TJ, the Soul went undrafted, and Soul's still quite a strong pick, especially given the way that people have been treating magical ADCs. And plus, she tends to build a little bit more on the burst side as well. So these recent nerfs to the rings don't necessarily hit her as hard as her fellow magical ADCs. But with the Ao Kwang locked in, if you take Soul, you're committing almost to 3 magical damage dealers as your damage.
Yes.
And that's always a risk in Smite, because it's pretty easy to itemize against that. So I'm not sure that I love it necessarily first pick, but if they've got a strong Ao Kwang player on their team, then this is a god that can run away with the game.
Maybe thinking it's actually might even be a 5,000 IQ play. It's going to take longer to stack that prophetic cloak, which was picked up by both these supports as well. But I am glad to see a bunch of Eedjiots go to kind of defaulting to what worked really well for them. Their duo lane played lights out, so we just didn't have an amazing start. But as soon as that Apollo came online, I know we're still, I get the sense that we're still not entirely convinced by the Apollo pick per se, but Swedish is definitely doing the best that they can to prove us otherwise. So I'm glad to see this duo lane come back.
Right, and like I said at the start of last game, what we're really looking for is this intersection between comfort and meta. And this duo lane, they lean into the comfort, and the rest of the team with the Thor and the Morgan, that was a little bit closer to meta. It's a little bit more on the nose than I was thinking, but it worked really well. And I think if you're going to see another performance like Matthias had on the Geb in game 1 come out again, it's going to be so hard to shut down what a bunch of Eedjiots are looking to do. And yeah, I'm not convinced about Apollo as a god within the wider meta at the moment in Smite, but I thought that was a really strong showing. And interesting too, because we saw gods like the Rama banned in the second ban phase. So clearly, having seen that the Apollo wasn't banned out in that first ban phase, just a priority for a bunch of Eedjits to get this on the team now.
Yeah, speaking of getting that priority, Merlin once again is going to be picked up as well. Apple Toast again didn't really get to see much of the Merlin, or granted that with how far ahead a bunch of Eedjits we're just kind of diving down. This Merlin was constantly flickering away, not able to get their abilities online. But I do love the Athena pick as well. That's going to be taken by Hati as well. So this is already, I think, from a draft perspective, much better. It seems a little bit more easier to pilot as well. It's quite straightforward. I taunt, they die. Ao Kwang is bringing around with that execute available to them. We saw how many times a bunch of Eedjits escaped with low HP, and now you've got to deal around with that execute all of a sudden. So, Hati have really given themselves some really good tools to work with. Persephone as a mid lane pick. Where do your battle lines fall on this one, Haunting?
I was so ready to talk about Athena and Merlin, and then the Persephone got picked, and I guess we've got to talk about that. I don't know. I don't think I've seen this god in the longest time. I don't know how good I think she is right now, because all of the conversation around Persephone, whenever there is any discourse around Persephone, is around pre-rework, post-rework. Yeah. What should the abilities do to be interesting? And in a game like this right now, where we're heading into game 2 of a promotion set, that's not a conversation that matters. All that matters is how strong is this god and how good are you at playing her. I would guess she's kind of middle of the road right now. I don't get the feeling that she's particularly strong at proccing tablet. That said, Grasp of Death is a strong ultimate and has a real position to change these team fights. So I don't know that I hate it, but given that the Morgan Le Fay was still available, given that there are other mages that surely are pretty good right now, Sol probably runs pretty nicely in that mid lane. We like the idea of the Baba Yaga. I've seen people talk about Chunga being pretty good with tablet.
Okay, yeah.
It feels just like a weird decision to me.
Well, as you say, maybe he's just leaning into that comfort as well, and also you have got that game cushion as well. Maybe teams are maybe a bunch of Eedjiots are thinking that, you know what, we can try something a little bit more spicy for this second draft. Granted, Geb and Apollo, it's not really. It's like chicken korma levels of spicy right now. There's a little bit there, but mostly pretty standard as things go, especially with this Hercules being locked in as well. Ban phase, Assassin's being taken off, as Susano, Nejar removed as well. Some pretty high priority picks to be removing off the board as well. And going by how the 4 was piloted in that first game by Narodi, I'm not surprised to see these Assassins be banned at all.
Right. Very similar picks in terms of either mobility with the Susano and good use of Bluestone as well. And Naja, also a god that we're seeing pick up Bluestone. Less on the mobility, but very good on that setup initiation that we saw come out of Narodi. So you're right to identify them as similar picks. But now Narodi's been left with the pick of the litter and seeing the whole draft in front of you. You've got a pretty good option to pick something that shuts this down, plays well into it. So it'll be interesting to see what Narodi picks. And the Daji is a curious one. I feel like this is a god that at this point in Smite almost feels impossible to nerf, because we saw it throughout the last season. People playing Daji at a really high level, and the gods saw nerf after nerf after nerf. And if we're going to be in a Daji meta again, maybe this god is just here to stay.
Yeah, it always feels to me that when we do see the Daji being, how well can this Daji actually stick to the targets that they want to be on as well? And normally this gets enabled by the rest of the team as well, right? You're burning crucial cooldowns, you're CCing crucial targets to allow this, Narodi to just literally run through, proc all those bleeds with the 1,000 cuts as well, and also, not even dealing with the Palau as well, which in of itself, an ultimate ability. There's safety, there's engage, there's also buying time as well. So I think if you're gonna pull it out, I'm pretty sure Narodi's gonna put on a bit of a clinic here. Can definitely pilot it better than I can, because my Daji, less said about the better, at least. But we get to at least witness it, because game number 2 is coming your way between these two teams. The battleground is ready for the season of monsters, and game number 2 is on the horizon. A bunch of Eedjiots versus Hati. Match points for a bunch of Eedjiots over on your right hand side. Hati, your team on order.
And it's interesting to see how we start here. I've seen a couple of teams try different things. This looks like the start that we saw happen a little bit more over the weekend with the play-ins, where you're going to get 2 camps on your duo side, then go to purple together. Whereas at the start of the season, we were seeing a lot of people try this triple camp start on the duo lane side, where you'd go purple and green into harpies at the same time, and that would often leave you getting to the lane guaranteed level 2, but often very low health bars. Whereas this time we're seeing much more of a focus on staying healthy, getting to lane with that level 2 still, and trying to get some pressure. And it's going to be Hati getting good pressure in the duo.
Well, and pressure coming out to that mid lane as well. Appletoast has already burnt the beads. I'm not even a minute in as well. On the Rodi, I was just watching that pathing coming out to, Toby on the Ao Kwang, did the standard start on the right hand side, then went straight over to their speed camp before going towards mid. The Rodi just barreled down towards the mid lane almost instantly as well, and was rewarded for it. 145 seconds for that Merlin to get the beats back towards them as well. So I do want to see the return ganks, and honestly, we are going to see them, knowing how a bunch of Eedjiots have been playing around their jungler as well. You can see here that over on the left hand side with these mid harpies, we do get a little bit of action at least. Toby might be a tiny bit caught out, as Mutark is here, but doesn't quite have the damage yet to follow up on that one. Appletoast as well, kind of waiting in the wings, but Hati really don't want to commit to this one. Rory once again leaping forwards, gets a bit of chip damage down, but the tier 1 is there for safety.
And this is really what you want to see in the early going, even if you're not getting those kills, because kills are really nice, but they are nice to have this early in the game. But a bunch of Eedjiots were able to get a wave under tower here, and they're able to go and get those side Harpies first, and then they're going to get back to farming potentially wave earlier, so they're just going to get to control the state of this mid lane a lot more. And we've seen it here on the other side too. Hati able to get down into that gold buff as well. Oh, sorry, a bunch of Eedjiots even able to get down into that gold buff as well. And this is the way that this early game is going to play, especially if both these teams are going to be a little bit more careful, which I imagine they will after the way that last game played out. It's going to be about who can secure these small advantages, control which waves are getting to the enemy tower, and using that to springboard where your jungle farm is coming. And so far, that's favoring a bunch of Eedjiots.
And it's also looking towards these junglers. You know, we naturally look towards these pace-setting characters. You know, spoke a lot about Narodi, but Toby here on the Arquan can definitely get involved, especially when you have the setup that this duo lane does. You can see Zeta Sparta hitting a double taunt onto both members of the duo lane, but now looking towards the body block as well. The shockwave will come out towards Zozola, who is just being crowded out by the members of a bunch of Eedjiots. First blood goes the way of Swedish, and that is the start they wanted to get.
And you talked about the double taunt coming out there from Sparta, but let us not forget the kind of lockdown that's available to you early in the game with a Geb and an Apollo. We saw the rollout, we saw the shockwave, we saw the moves, we saw So Beautiful, and all of those things together just made sure that Zazol had nowhere to go. And I know that you feel like this dash can be pretty good sometimes if you're playing Xbalanque, because, hey, when you're in midair, you're CC immune, and that looks like it's doing something. But if you can't get up into that up-in-the-air state, you're going nowhere. And Zazol was caught out, dead to rights, and even more of a lead established as both these players taking over to level 5 now for a bunch of Eedjiots, so they're going to have those ultimates available for the next time a fight breaks out.
Yeah, I did like how you were running off the ability names for the Apollo. You actually weren't. You were just describing what happened. It's just that the ability names just really fit what was happening, you know, with the moods, with the So Beautiful. It all just kind of fitted together, which I felt was quite poetic. One thing, though, as I look towards that left-hand side, though, Haunting, is actually seeing a Sundering Spear being picked up by ZFS Sparta for their relic choice as well. And I guess, you know, Matthias was quite a pain in that first game. This feels a little bit targeted.
It does, but it's also a really strong relic to pick up on Athena, because Taunt gives you such good setup to make sure you're going to be hitting this. Because that's the thing, right? Sundering Spear is only as good as you make it. If you miss every Sundering Spear, it might as well not be a slot in your relic bar. But here, we've got a god that can hit it pretty easily, and is going to make an impact. We saw it dropped in that fight, and I'm sure it'll be dropped in more fights. And you're right, it's good for taking down these tankier targets. It's good for breaking those shields open that Matthias is going to leave down. And I think that if Zeta Sparta can deploy these with good timing, this could be a really good band-aid for Hati.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm imagining the combos in my head right now. You know, you're combining it with Appletoast. He's able to shred away protections in those fire stances as well. Getting Toby involved, you know, just get the members low enough so that Toby can come in with the execute. Get Zozola in, you know, this Xbalanque, which we haven't actually really touched on that much. Kind of, you know, just went in the draft and we're like, yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. But as this game goes much later on, you know, with the passive as well, you know, Zozola's going to start winning out on these trades. That is, it seems quite a long way away, though, just looking at that quick exchange between Swedish and Zozola. The Rising Jaguar will immediately come out, but a Cataclysm having to beads there as well. Matthias leaves the lane for just a moment, but don't you dare think that he's not waiting in the wings. Beads out on the Xbalanque.
You got so much there for that ult for Matthias, right? Not only did you get the beads, but you also took Athena ult, which I think is, at this point in the game, something like a 2-minute cooldown. So that's huge to get out in this early game. And Matthias got that just for a Geb ult, which is on a much shorter cooldown. You're not really looking for team fight with it in the early going. Really great play there.
You see here that, well, Matthias, you know, as we were singing the praises, Does go down though to Toby on the Ao Kwang, and also using that ultimate to reposition straight back into farming, keeping that efficiency going. 1-1 between both of these teams, Haunting. It's definitely a departure from the absolute bloodbath that we got treated to in game number 1. And, you know, is that more a case of, you know, a bunch of Eedjiots just not finding opportunities, or do you think Hati are just playing a little bit more safer?
I think it's got to be down to Hati playing a little bit safer, and I think their comp demands it a little bit this game. You look at that left-hand side of that item build board, you've got one person out of 5 who is not building a stacking item, which means all of these builds are going to take a little bit longer to get online. So with a team that played with near unhinged levels of aggression in game 1, that's just not an option for you in this game. You're going to take a little bit longer to hit those power spikes than your opponents, so you've got to play a little bit more carefully, make sure you're getting to that point in the game and you're not too far behind when it happens so that you can step up into these fights. And I think for Hati, that's going to be the way that they win this game. You already talked about some of these picks being scaling picks, like the Jubilanque with that passive, but they've opted into that with the way they've chosen to build. And I think if they can try and just stem the flood for this early game, then it's going to work out fine.
See the ultimates coming out there. The Rising Knight, the pal out as well. Swedish goes up into the air themselves as well, but will also just go over towards the gold buff as well. So an interesting call there is, you know, 3 ultimates were thrown out, and actually made that 4. I just saw Nighthawk's ultimate go down, but there's a taunt over towards this gold camp as well. But Zero Sparta just channeling the defender of Olympus will crash down. Nairobi might be able to get away with Zola with the tick damage on the poison, was able to find that one. Toby gets a knock up onto Matthias, can't find the execute, but the CC is going to be more than enough. The taunt back towards the Geb, and Toby's trying to get this pick on towards Matthias, but having to burn the beads, the Swedish is just able to free cast. So Zola's here to try and at least dissuade any further moves, but Hati got to get away from this one. Swedish is definitely starting to connect some shots.
That was a risk of seeing Hati of number 1 with the aggression.
Oh, Sammy.
Oh, Sammy. Now that was like game 1, where Sammy gets killed under tower by an ulting member of Hati. But I think what they're trying to do there was a lot like game 1, where you're just trying to force play after play after play, and it could have got out of control a little bit there for Hati. I'm glad they pulled back towards the end to stop that from happening. But you still lost out a little bit there. Toby beating at the wrong timing with that shockwave is going to be something to pay attention to. Now that you've definitely seen that the Ao Kwang doesn't have any kind of engagement with Blink, so you know that the beads is there because you've seen them. So even if you've got team members who haven't checked the tab screen yet, you've got that called. But also, it's going to make this Ao Kwang a little bit more vulnerable. And given that it's going to, as I say, take a little bit of time to get online with this Book of Thoth stacking, I don't know. I think I'd be hunting now for Ao Kwang to try and slow down the way this god can snowball.
Absolutely, and with Hati getting, you know, 3 kills on the board as well, it looks like they don't quite have the gold lead yet, but they seem to be having a little bit more control at the moment. So this gold lead is very deceptive, I feel. Haunting is that it's kind of, you know, it's about a 1,000 in favor of a bunch of Eedjiots still, but it still feels very even with how both of these teams are playing.
It is, and this is a gold lead that's a little bit deceptive, right? Because Persephone passive means that the way that you farm is not only through the kills and assists that you get onto minions and players and jungle camps, but also you get gold from these plants throughout the game. It's not loads, it's by the end of the game about a full item's worth of gold. So at this stage, it's not going to be the several hundred gold that you see, but it is slowly padding that lead. So a bunch of Eedjiots is not quite as far ahead as we should think they are in terms of how the flow of the game has been going. But the other way that this lead is deceptive, TJ, is these skirmishes of being won by Hati, but their composition and the builds would tell you that they're a late game team. So bunch of Eedjiots really need to be playing this one carefully, playing it tight, no room for mistakes, because you're already starting to lose out against a team that is going to beat you if this gets to the late game.
Yeah, and I think a bunch of Eedjiots definitely are aware of this one. 3 members over towards the right-hand side. Defender of Olympus will come down instead of Sparta. Tilly throwing down these poison pools as well, the tremble as well. Quite a bit of damage the Ormunganda can pull out. Actually going Tablet of Destiny as well, so even adding some of that true damage as well Toby might be a little bit caught out here. The Cataclysm comes down. He does actually have the beads available, and they will use it once again. It felt like it's only just came up online, and it's immediately gone as well. But now a 1v1 Zola, the Rising Jaguar, trying to get the extra damage down on towards Swedish. Does have that ultimate available for the Apollo to get out of dodge if they need to. But for now, it's just going to be two ADCs just chucking their auto attacks into each other and heavy trading. So again, a lot of movement coming out from a bunch of Eedjiots, but no one from Hati falls once again.
Right, and I think this is one that it was good of Zozola to not engage too much longer in that boxing, because with the Rage finish, Swedish just wins that with RNG because you are getting crits down sometimes, but Needhang takes the Sunder and does get out just in time, but that was looking dicey there for the mid laner of a bunch of Eedjiots.
And that is a relic that can be played around as well from ZFS Spartan. It looks like a bunch of Eedjiots do want to do that at least. A nice good double taunt to get away from Toby. The Apollo comes down as well. Into the Pala we go. And the Grasping Death coming out as well. So 3 ultimates just thrown into the middle of the jungle. And they are going to pick off the Ao Kwang at least. A lot committed for it, but a bunch of Eedjiots do get their second kill.
Traditionally, I'd hate that kind of overcommit for one pick, but I think with where a bunch of Eedjits are in this game right now, you need that confidence of a pick right there. So using whatever it takes to get it, ultimates, they'll be back. But right now, Nairobi needs to be paying attention to their life bar.
You say with the having to burn the beats as well, they might be able to get away, but Tilly is at least there to pick off the Darji, and now in towards the World Serpent. Going to look for a pick onto Matthias. Going to have to juke away from that last tick of the ultimates, even though Geb shield onto themselves as well. But Needhang is actually at least answered back onto the Athena. Tilly maybe looking for this pick. Matthias is quite low, but still quite a tanky member as well. Low health bars across the board as Zola enters the fray, and Needhang is going to actually pick off Tilly as well. It's absolute madness in that mid lane, Haunting.
So we just got that bloodbath that you were asking for from game one. What happened in the mid lane? I think that we're seeing some shades of Hati from game one show back up here, and I think you can really see that in Tilly GB sticking around under that tower for what felt like at least a minute, but was probably barely 30 seconds in game time. But it doesn't matter because it gave enough time for Needhang to get another couple of kills on the board, sitting at 3-0 on this Persephone, building up a big lead over their mid lane counterpart. And I think this is going to be where we start to see a bunch of Eedjits come into their own.
As the Athena's going to come into the duo lane as well, going to hit a taunt on towards it, and Toby is there with the King of the Eastern Seas. Confirms kill onto Nairobi, but now Apollo comes down, and there's a very, very thank you. Come again, able to take down Zozola. And now what else can they do as well with the moves? Looking for the knock up on towards Toby as well, as trying to hit and weave and auto attack cancel, get all of this damage in, but neither of these members fall. Matthias once again playing bodyguard so well for Swedish on this Apollo.
This really has been one of those games where you just see it play out around the way that the support is playing. And we saw it last game from Matthias too, but Matthias has really been important for helping these skirmishes play out the way that a bunch of Eedjits want them to, at least where it's possible. They have been on the losing end of a lot of them, but since this game has been about skirmishes, having your support who seems to navigate them perfectly play to this level is always going to help you. I think it's really going to be slightly more difficult though, as they've lost the tower on the other side of the map, and getting the beats out again from Toby there.
Toby's had 3 opportunities to have beads available and has used all of them immediately, and now it looks like Hati have found that they've smelled blood in the water and looking for Matthias, and once again with the Sunder proc as well, Toby is able to avenge their own beads usage and able to get the pick onto the Geb as well, but only the one onto the supports, and a lot of health bars seemingly a bit topped up, so neither team looking towards that Gold Fury just yet. We can see Apple Toast just looming around. Roby did steal away a little bit of XP as well. Some of those incremental leads coming out, but it's only going to be the one pick onto the Geb for now.
And Geb's not a pick that you hate seeing go down if you're on a bunch of Eedjits. This is a god that kind of does what it needs to do from level 5 onwards, and since that point's been reached already by Matthias, I'm not too worried about it falling behind, and you've also got a bit of a lead on this god, so really one of those losses you don't mind taking for a bunch of Eedjits, but still for Hati, it's important to get anything that you can, because You're the team that's on the losing end of this matchup so far, already taken a loss. You need to get back into this, or you need to dominate this game so that you can get back into the series as best as you can. I think we've really been seeing it with the way they've been getting some picks and the way that Tilly has just run this right-hand side of the map. But whether Tilly can convert that into anything is going to be a big question, because that's something that we saw happen last game too, where Tilly really crushed the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game, but wasn't really that impactful in the latter 15 minutes or so.
We can see that they are going to be in a spot above themselves, but at least having the World Serpent ultimate available to them. Actually, a bunch of each going to chase this one out. Tank is waiting in the wings. He's going to crash down, and the Grasp of Death will come out. It will connect onto 2 members as Tilly's going to take a lot of damage, and Tank is able to confirm the pick. The boulder, the ultimate comes down. It's just a 1-for-1 overall. Nairobi does fall inside of that fight once again, but now it's a 4. It's going to be a 3 versus 3. Sammy going forward on towards Sparta as well, in towards the Fire Giant pit. Apple Toast able to get the abilities out, but right now a bunch of Eedjiots just chasing Toby around. He led them on a wild goose chase, but now members grouping up again. A knock up cannot connect. Would have certainly spelled death, however, that's hit. Meanwhile, Zazola and Swedish having another one of their 1v1s dueling in and around of these walls. Back to the mid lane we go. Toby gets a shot, gets a shockwave hit onto them, and Sparta is able to find a taunt of their own with the confounds, but just can't find the follow-up just yet. Nairobi has recently respawned, and it looks like that's going to signal the end of that one, but Zozola burns the Aegis as Swedish just heavily wins that 1v1.
It's going to be good for Hati on the left side of the map. They did win that fight on the right side of the map, but good for a bunch of Eedjiots. And they won that fight on the right side of the map, but it's not really helped Sammy a great deal, who's still behind in this matchup. And I really liked the way that Hati actually played that team fight. Tilly landed right on top of Neathank, able to avoid the cage from a Grasp of Death, and also get some damage down onto Neathank to stop him from being nearly as formidable in that fight. And then the way that Hati moved around that fight, they were able to split it up so that no one member ever got isolated, and it meant that a bunch of Eedjiots wasn't able to get anything more than the pick onto Tilly. A really, really effective use of your characters there by Hati.
We could just see on the screen as well a bunch of Eedjiots able to utilize their tempo advantage, able to pick up the Gold Fury completely uncontested, catching members on the recall as well. Just having a look down, Pyromancer was picked up. There is going to be that bomb available as well by the looks of things. It looks like we may have missed it though, but it's absolutely fine. It just is how it is sometimes. But what we haven't been missing, of course, is, well, it's going to be Neathank finding a 4th pick onto this Persephone as well. Definitely starting to get some value out of it as well. Those Grasp of Deaths have really been, well, spelling death for whoever they catch.
They have, and it's really interesting to look at how Persephone has decided to use that lead built into much more of a common build that we were seeing last season before the tablet meta evolved, and going to be useful for taking down these tanks, hopefully, with that extra percent pen. That was a huge Grasp of Death there, though.
That was a Grasp of Death to the bugle right there, and able to catch all 3 members. At least the gank attempt happened, but Neathank just dances around all members and just waits out those abilities. But now 4 members going down the mid lane. Tilly's got quite a nice flank here on towards Sammy as well. It's going to be the Confound. Looking for the taunt. Nairobi goes in. Looking onto Appletoast as well. The bleed coming through into the Palau. The Defender of Olympus will come out to CC immune the Palau stun. And now it looks like a bunch of Eedjiots actually wanting to back away here. They can't overcommit to this one. The reset's coming out as well from Hati. And meanwhile, throughout all of this one, Zozola on the left-hand side finally gets some alone time. Or does he? Teleport coming in. An ultimate going to crash down as well. Zola with the rising. Jaguar comes out. Early beads as well to avoid the Mez. But Sweetie just has to hit these basics. The Mez comes out. Those no beads. There's no CC immunity. And now there is no hope for the Jablonke as 4 members collapse and Swedish collects his kill.
There's a really nice play. I was really worried with how much space it felt like Zazol got, and that they were going to get away, and they would have going to be able to take with them Apollo ult and Sammy's teleport. But instead, The members of a bunch of Eedjiots able to combine, take down that Xbalanque and get 2 towers, and perhaps the 2 most important towers on the map as well, because they've opened up the entire left-hand side of the map for themselves. They potentially get to converge on mid-tier 2 here as well, and that's going to make defending this Fire Giant so much harder for for Hati, because not only are they dealing with a split map situation, but they're dealing with a split map situation against Apollo, who's got that global ultimate to really take advantage of this.
Yeah, thankfully they do have their own global presence to at least try and counteract that. But we've seen Defender of Olympus has been used not to necessarily engage fights. It's more, well, I need CC immunity and I also need to protect my carries as well. So probably Hati really, sorry, ZFS Sparta from Hati not really wanting to use that Athena ult as much as they would like to for the intended reasons. I think it's kind of where I'm going with that one, at least. But one thing I do want to bring up, Haunting, though, is that we see a different dimension to a bunch of Eedjiots and how they're playing. I've been really impressed by their macro sense, because it feels like they're picking off these objectives not by just murdering their opposition. We saw from game 1 they're more than capable of doing that, but this time it's all on tempo.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's had to have happened in this game, because Hati have really adjusted their aggression. We've seen moments of them playing a little bit fast and loose like they did in game 1, but they've been a lot more measured, and it's meant that they've actually been able to win out some of these fights, and we've seen it, right? Hati have that kill lead, but then the gold lead for a bunch of Eedjiots is much more significant than you'd expect for the team that's behind in kills, and I think you're right. It's all come about tempo. They've really been able to get a really good, strong sense of where Hati are on the map. How do you take the map away from them? How do you pull it in the opposite direction? How do you exploit these objectives for the time that you have? And I think it's been working really, really well. This game has been somewhat about the stuff after the stuff, but it's almost been about taking the stuff so that there can't be any other stuff. And I think for a bunch of Eedjiots, that might be how this game has to be played, because these fights have been a lot tougher for them than they were in game 1.
For sure, but you can't count them out as well. They may be tougher, but this is where, you know, teams start to rise up as well. Tilly coming into the left-hand side, tried to start up that Oni Fury. You can see with all 5 members now converging on the pit. And it's so dangerous around these Fury objectives now with how open the map now is. All of a sudden, there's so many angles for members to get in. You can see a bunch of Eedjiots have full control. A double knock-up coming from Matthias at least. And looking for that clean engage for now. See the Contagion proc starting to tick as well from the CC. But so far, just a little bit of posturing. There's a bunch of Eedjiots starting to make up their mind. They've not aggroed the Oni Fury yet, but neither have they aggroed Hati at least. It's a very tense dance.
It's going to be a tough one. Hati have great counter engage with this Athena ult as well, and look at
they've started it.
Tilly is making.
Oh, this could be huge from Tilly as well. Has got the World Serpent available to them. The Oni Fury has reset. They're going to actually turn attention towards Tilly. Even though it can't be pulled back in, will take bonus damage from just being simply hard CC'd. And look at that HP go down. The World Serpent will come out, but there's going to be a gank. Toby finds a gap onto Matthias, is able to get that first pick, and it's going to be answered back at least onto Sammy. 2 members from a bunch of Aegis fall. Hati have found 2 very important picks, and Tilly is able to escape as well. The Oni Fury may be their prize. Apollo is waiting in the air, but it looks like they're going to crash down towards the Pyroman, so the trade happens, but Hati able to get that Oni Fury.
I really, really like that from Hati. I think they played that team fight so well. Tilly, it looked like was going to be playing the flank and just there to offer big damage onto the backline and big disruption, but instead they played as this distraction element and drew all of the members and all of the resources from a bunch of Eedjiots away, and that meant that the front line for a bunch of Eedjiots got absolutely destroyed. Just the health bar from Matthias chewed through and executed. Then Sammy was next to go down, and suddenly this team that plays so well around their support, engages and peel, has none of that to fall back on, and the backline has to retreat, give away that important objective to Hati. Sure, they were able to exploit their good map presence to get something of their own in this cross map, but a really strong play there by Hati.
It looks like on the right-hand side, Swedish just won the isolated 1v1 there.
I really wish we could see that one back, because both of these players have been playing their individual fights very, very well. These are both gods that need to dance around and hit their stuff. And I think for Swedish, that's going to be a huge confidence boost, especially because it feels like Toby has been the linchpin for the damage for Hati.
Absolutely, and just looking at the items as well, you can see that both of these hunters really are starting to come into their own now, as I'm seeing 4 completed items going into a last one for Swedish as well. Items coming out for Zozola as well. There's so much damage being pumped out here. And also, Toby with the rings being completed, the Spirit Mages, the Poly as well. That is a very bursty Ao Kwang as well. It's going to be a tough one here, approaching 26 minutes in. At this point in the last game, a bunch of Eedjiots were just so far ahead of Hati. It was more when, not if, they were able to take that Titan down. But for now, the game still remains in the balance. But Hati feeling a little bit more confident. Once again, members around the Fire Giant for the classic dance that we all know and love as well. But once again, much like with the Gold Fury, a bunch of Eedjiots having that initial priority over it. See, Appletoe's just throwing some abilities down. Matthias does take a little bit of HP, but thankfully does have enough to tank it at least. And members starting to try and just trying to prod their way into this one, but neither team wanting to commit.
Yeah, a bunch of Eedjiots gave up a lot of ground in the early version of this Fire Giant dance because they were holding the pit really well, and they started to fall back. And I'm a little bit worried that they've done that because if you see, it gave Hati time to push out some of these waves in mid, so they now have a much stronger position around this pit. And I think we're seeing some of the ways that builds have changed come into effect this front line as well. So a lot of damage went down onto Matthias, and Matthias not with that sovereignty and only with 1 HP 5 item. It's just going to take a lot longer for the support to heal up. So poke damage mattering a lot more now than it did in last season, say, where supports, it felt like we're always operating at max HP 5, and you're in these long extended engagements. The poke just didn't really matter on them.
Oh, you can see that Nari's just had enough of this one. Into the Powwow we go, but can't find any members to pull in. But now this is such a difficult position for Hati because they're dealing with Switch on the left hand side. He's going to be split pushing. He will ult in here. Matthias, again, the front line is back in action once more, and the call is for Switch to just carry on going. They're happy to take this 4 versus 4 because Hati, they're not committing. They're not wanting to stop this now. A bunch of Eedjiots just slowly starting to close the bias around, but Matthias maybe caught out a little bit. Does have Cascades available, but Toby into the back line. He finds the mid laner. Somehow Toby comes up huge there, will be knocked away. The defender of Olympus will come down looking for a confound, looking for a taunt. It's not going to matter because Sammy has at least got the beads to get away from that one, but he cannot get away from the Ao Kwang ultimate. It's a double kill for Toby, and he wants more onto Matthias, but Hati win the Fire Giant dance. The Fire Giant will most likely be their prize. A bunch of Eedjiots though still keeping pressure on that left hand side. You can see Swedish go for the dive down onto Zozola. Just need to hit the abilities. Bead Aegis has been popped. The Rising Jaguar fall as well. Zozola gets out, and the Fire Giants, I want to say, goes towards Hati. Matthias is in the neighborhood, but can't quite get there. The Fire Giant goes away, and as I've just cast a curse of Zola into oblivion there, it does die underneath the left-hand side bird. Again, a crazy few exchanges, Haunting.
Yeah, and for me, the story of that fight is all about Toby, but it's also about a bunch of Eedjiots falling for the trap that Hati have been falling for a lot of this game. And I think they didn't know where to commit, and I think they stayed too long in both places. They stayed too long trying to fight out on the right-hand side, thinking, well, Swedish can get here when we need them. But then Swedish stayed too long on the left-hand side, and I think they were tied up really well by Zazol. If Zazol's job was just to buy time, they did their job perfectly. But in that, there is a lot of impatience on the other side of the map. We saw the Powwow go down way too early in that fight. And Toby was able to take advantage, popping through, killing Neathank, who had to start this game, been an important part of this squad, getting out to that 4-0 lead, getting rid of that Persephone who had the ult available, had the ability to start controlling some of that fight, and then able to turn that around again onto Sammy, who... Hercules, another way of controlling the way that the fight flows. And it just meant that, again, a bunch of Eedjiots were left wide open and collapsed around it. And I think that's one of the things we're going to see if Hati want to win this game is finding these central pillars, removing them from the fight, and using the time that you get without that pillar there to then try and knock the rest of the house over. We saw it once around the Gold Fury with Matthias, and we saw it again there with taking out Neathank. I think it's going to be a tough road to climb because even with that Fire Giant buff, there is a bit of a gold deficit for Hati, but they've shown that they know how to win this game. It's just about whether a bunch of Eedjiots give them enough chances to do it.
Yeah, it is all about that conversion as well, and maybe just removing the pillars is maybe quite a literal sense as well with getting that Powwow out. You know, it's such a huge ultimate available to have in the game, but it feels like Naraldi just hasn't had the impact with that ultimate that they would have had with, say, an Anvil of Dawn.
Right,
You know, just not been able to impact it.
That's been so noticeable, is that the Anvil of Dawn coming out from Narodi was something that we thought of as just defining the pace of game one. And this Powwow has been nowhere near as effective, even though you think of those ultimates as doing somewhat similar things in that either they burn the beads or they initiate the fight. And for a bunch of Eedjiots, it doesn't feel like the same kind of value has been had nearly as much. And when Narodi picked this god, they knew what they were getting into. It was the last god picked in the entire draft.
You know, there's definitely maybe a little bit of pressure coming from that as well. Like, you have the full draft to really, you know, plot out what you want to do and how you want to go about it, and just to not see that come through is, you know, it's a lot of pressure. You can see the engage did come down. The Darkest Night was thrown up by Zozola, and Hati play around it very well. They're able to get down this tier 2 tower. Matthias did also use that Cataclysm as well, just seeing the gem over on the right-hand side go down to blank. And for Hati, this seems very measured of them. You know, switch the nameplates around. This is what a bunch of Eedjiots did. You know, they were just taking these objectives one by one. But of course, we knew what happened there. A bunch of Eedjiots, though, cannot, you know, have to still be respected here. Nairobi just on the flanks, though. Pings are coming out. They do know the Daji is on the left-hand side, at least. At least I'm hoping that they're Hati pings and not from a bunch of Eedjiots. Toby goes very far forward onto Sammy. He's actually able to wail down, uses that Water Illusion to dodge away from the ultimate as well. The tier 2 tower mid falls as well. Another successful siege, and Hati just picking up this latent gold.
And this is going to be crucial for them, because by picking up these towers, these gold deposits that there are on the map, they're able to even up that gold lead. And this is the point of the game where you have to be scared if you're a bunch of Eedjiots, because we talked about this throughout the early game. Hati are the team with the better late game draft. They've got the builds for a late game setup, and now they're in a position where they've made the game state, even if not in their favor, for a bunch of Eedjiots. That's a really scary situation.
Eedjiots is able to get the sneak on the Phoenix, at least. Will be able to take it down, but members are going to be absolutely swarming in, and he does not get away for it scot-free. Caught out by the reset. So maybe well, I mean, in hindsight, 2020 and all that, but I'm going to have to talk about that later on. Narobi straight up into the Powwow to get away for the Confound. Able to throw back Apple Toast. Did not have any relics available, and that's a pick onto their mid lanes. Out of Sparta, Defender of Olympus to get back to safety. And, you know, I wanted to sing the praises of Hati for at least, you know, punishing Swedish for the left-hand side Phoenix malarkey, but Apple Toast just gets caught out with no relics. And all of a sudden, we're back to a 4 versus 4.
We certainly are, and even worse for a bunch of Eedjiots is they need to now think about all of these firemen.
Rooting bomb. Looking for the knock-up as well. Beats and Aegis forced out by Zozola as well. Matthias chucking that one down. Roby actually going very low, though. Tilly looking for the killing blow. It's actually going to be picked off by Tilly, able to confirm that one onto the jungler. I'd love to know how that one started, but what matters is the Daji going back to the spawn at least. More poking coming out. Zozola definitely feeling so much more confident of rising Jaguar into a bunch of Eedjiots and know they're able to get out alive. But left-hand side fire minions do need dealing with, so some recalls will be calling out. It's a very tense time here, Haunting.
It really is, and this is exactly what a bunch of Eedjiots wanted to do. And hey, this is, you know, Season of Monsters. We love all the new stuff. We love seeing Tablet. We love seeing these new map and the way that it plays out. We also love the old classics too, and what's more classic than an Apollo split pushing? And I think this is the way that a bunch of Eedjiots have to play to claw their way back into this one. They've fallen behind, and you've got to use every tool available to you. Oh,
wow. Wow. That was, I think, 2 auto attacks from Toby and Appletoast throwing just one ability into the middle of that one. And Swedish, who has been this constant thorn in the side of Hati, is down for what may be a game-defining Fire Giant fight that is brewing.
And it's so important as well, because neither of these teams have a great deal of objective burst. So taking out a member means that you're more likely to win a fight. You're more likely to be able to control the other side of the map. And then you're able to use your Shred, which in the case of a team like Hati, you've got an Alquang, you've got your Xbalanque, and you've got the Merlin. This just gives them so much control over the objective pit.
You can see here as well, the objective is the target, and also with Apple Toast now on the respawn and able to drop down the abilities, this Fire Giant does go down extremely quickly. The Grasp of Death will come down, hits onto Zozola, hits onto ZFS Sparta. The Fire Giant's still low, but where is the attention? Is it to try and secure the Fire Giant? It's going to go the way of Hati. They do secure, and now a bunch of Eedjiots might want to get out of their one, but Toby will not let the Geb escape with the ultimate once more. Dives down on towards Neil Hank underneath the tier 2 tower with another ability, but can't find it. Defender of Olympus will crash down and confound his way, but Sammy plays bodyguard with a huge crunching tackle to get them away from his members. But now Hati want to clean up this fight underneath the tier 2 tower. Appletoes takes down Swedish yet again over on this right hand side. The tower will soon fall. 5 minions pouring into the left hand side. It's not won completely for free at least, but Hati once again, they get the big Fire Giant.
And again, it was an important fight for watching exactly what Toby was doing. Sure, the Fire Giant fight felt a lot more about the way that abilities were used. We saw Palau again missing onto Toby. We saw Grasp of Death used pretty effectively, but only really to buy a few seconds in the pit. And it was Hati that were able to still take advantage of that. But then Toby, again, takes out the Matthias, and the team fight starts to fall around them. Matthias feels like, the way that I'm watching them in this game, they're having to play dive and peel, and as support that always really sucks because your attention is drawn and it's already such a hard role to play, but with your attention drawn both ways, it means the other team is able to exploit that, and we're seeing Toby do that really well, able to pile up some kills there. And for me, I feel like a bunch of Eedjiots really need to reassess their frontline strategy, because I feel like Sammy has just been really easily nullified in these last couple of fights, and it's meant that Matthias has been overstepping their mark a lot. And where last game was all about, well, Hardy can't necessarily position around what a bunch of Eedjiots are doing, it feels like that's ringing true for a bunch of Eedjiots this game. They're getting caught out of position. The peel isn't really coming through anymore. The engage is questionable, and it's meaning that these team fights are now getting taken apart piece by piece by Hati.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we really have swapped the nameplates over, haven't we?
Really
These are all the pitfalls that Hati fell in that game number 1, and even just talking about Matthias having to split his role. Is he engage? Is he peel? What we were talking about ZFS Sparta in that game number 1 on the Maui, didn't really know what he wanted to do, and that discord between the two, between all the players, a bunch of Eedjiots just thrived in it, and now the shoe is really on the other foot here. You can see Sammy looking for a knockup was just very, very shy of hitting that one, at least maybe by a few pixels. But now a bunch of Eedjiots in a very sticky situation. Looks like 4 members left side. You got Toby in the mid lane as well. There's only waves pouring in from the right hand side as well, so Narodi has to deal with that one as well. And this is normally where Hati will look to at least engagement. I just took a lot of HP, and now Sammy insta confound. The front line doesn't look very tanky at all. Toby does go down off screen, but it's actually going to be the pick onto Hercules that matters. Zozola has entered the fray. It's a double kill on the Xbalanque. They take down the left bird, and now the counter engage from a bunch of Eedjiots. Narodi's able to take down the Xbalanque at least, but 3 members crowding out the Darji, who cannot do a thing more to get away from it. 3 members into the throne room. There's only 1 bird down, so the Titan remains relatively tanky. Low health bars as well. Matthias with a blink forward as well, looking to shockwave, looking to disrupt, looking to take away, but Hati are pulled back, and Matthias has done enough, and they have to go into a full retreat.
Matthias coming through again, hero of this game. I know the kill went down onto Narodi, but just so much work being done by the support to hold up that defense by the team. A really, really strong look there by Hardy. And I think, although we can talk about what the individual players did in that fight, and a lot of it comes down to the damage that Zol was able to pour out into the members of a bunch of Eedjiots, we saw 2 runic bombs used by Hati to cut those birds down to half health, and then convert one of that into a Phoenix kill. And that, for Hati, blew open that fight, because suddenly a bunch of Eedjiots were looking at two Hearthell Phoenixes, not sure which one to defend, and Hati were just able to pour into the base and start pouring damage out onto this team.
Yeah, the only downside really for Hati in that fight is that they lost Toby inside that mid lane. Yeah, that was nearly a perfectly executed plan, but it just that little slight hiccup as well, which does mean that the game is going to go into another phase of play, shall we say. Another fire giant has spawned as well, and all 5 members rooting over. Of course, Swedish back on split pushing duty once again. Not really been able to have any impact in these fights because they have found themselves picked off multiple times. Hati actually starting up the fire giant very early as well. And now what does Swedish do? Does he stick or does he twist? He's going to stick to the ultimate. He's going to on his way. The fire giant will be secured once again by Hati. And now Matthias hit free with the cataclysm, but the Geb is the sacrificial lamb. The Swedish still in the air at least, and it's a full retreat. VRR is the call. Hati get a fire giant onto all 5 members.
I actually really liked what a bunch of Eedjiots had in that fight. The Grasp of Death took Toby and stuck them way on the back of that fight so that this fight couldn't go the way that a lot of Hardy's successful team fights have been going. But even still, Tilly just able to chase Narodi all the way out of the fight. And this Jormungandr, I was a little skeptical coming into it, but it's created a lot of space this game.
Oh, Narambi's got to blink in with the Palau. He's actually got onto Zozolo as well. That's a crucial member. He's got no beads and no Aegis either. So it is a free target, but has to be very careful. The ultimate coming out from Sammy does do a little bit of damage. He misses the power drive though, and actually beads as well out of pure respect for the follow-up. But Hati see a 3rd Phoenix that hasn't been touched yet? Yeah, no, they're going to immediately deal with that one as they're going to prepare to siege this right-hand side bird.
It's going to be tough though. Zozol is sticking way back, waiting for that wave, because even though you've got the enhanced fire giant buff, you don't want to step too far forward with your carry here because no beads and no Aegis. There's the Magi's shelter to maybe protect them a little bit from the first CC, but huge grasp there.
Onto Zozola, and the Jablonke is gone. He is out of the fight, and Hati full retreat from this one. But now a bunch of Eedjiots, they have now got an opportunity to really pull one back, but there's no further moves here. Neat Tank. Huge moment. Matthias had one 10 minutes ago underneath the left-hand side bird, and now it's Neatank coming up clutch on the right-hand side. Zozola was the prior target, and Zozola went down.
Getting rid of Zozola there was huge because it protects the right-hand Phoenix. Otherwise, though, TJ, bunch of Eedjiots base is in a shambles right now. I guess with left Phoenix respawning, you've got a little bit more time to operate, but they had 2 Phoenixes down, all of that wave pushed right up to the right-hand Phoenix too, and even with 1 successful pick there, it feels much more like they were delaying, stemming the bleeding a little bit, rather than winning anything out of it. And even here, right, with that pick, you'd think they'd try and convert it into something, but they're going to lose out on the Primal Fury, and it looks like they're going to lose out on even some pressure in mid, as there's still Fire Waves able to take out this normal wave of minions they push right up to the middle of the lane. That's just slowly going to push back towards the space as well. It's a tough position right now for a bunch of Eedjiots.
Absolutely, and I feel for them that just the pick onto Zozola, the fact that we're still in this game is just good enough for a bunch of Eedjiots there. Heroics coming out from Neatank just to hit that ability onto the Jablonke. Fire Giants on 4 members, and for a bunch of Eedjiots though, they have got some positives at least from that pick. You do get a slight bit of a shutdown as well. The left-hand side inhib is back up. Fire Giants on 1 less member. And now Zozola is here though, but that's got to do wonders for the morale as well.
It has. It shows you that this isn't all said and done at this point, because you can win a fight and you can delay. This game, it looked like it was over 10 minutes ago for Hati, or for a bunch of Eedjiots. And right now, things are looking a little bit different, but I don't like that from Narodi.
Narodi did engage onto Toby as well, but just a defender of Olympus, the Confound as well, and the Darji once again bites the dust. 70 seconds on the death timer as well. That really could be huge, Haunting.
Don't like that at all. This Darji should have been positioned for a good flank once the engage happens, but now You're in a really tough
Matthias with
position.
the blink, he's going to hit 3. Now the grasp of death onto multiple members as well. A bunch of Eedjiots, the Hail Mary, they're trying to get something to happen. So Zola throws down the Darkest of Night and all members must retreat till he goes forward and prevents Swedish from getting back to spawn. The Apollo goes down and now the Titan once again is laid bare for Hati to take. Its 3 members, Sammy, Nitank and Matthias, to defend the entirety of their base. The right-hand bird still up. Only a few seconds left on the middle lane inhibitor, but Hati do not want to push. There is a 3rd fire giant available for them to take. And if a bunch of Eedjiots are going to simply stop the bleeding in their throne room, Hati are more than happy to take this fire giant uncontested.
And it's so hard right now if you're a bunch of Eedjiots because you don't want to let them get another enhanced fire giant.
They didn't stop it.
Yeah.
Again, rough.
That's really bad. That's really unfortunate for a bunch of Eedjiots not stopping that Phoenix from dying there, because now essentially it's like it's like a lot of that work that you've done has just been thrown away because you managed to get that Phoenix respawn timer all the way to full again, and after it died to just the minion wave, that took no resources, no work out of Hati, and now the timer has gone way back to 0, so you have to defend it for another couple of minutes all over again. And the while Hati able to get another enhanced fire giant, and it really feels like the game is in their hands at this point.
Yeah, I'm quite confident to say this is Hati's game to lose right now,
Yes.
with just the amount of control that they have. A bunch of Eedjiots just stuck in their own throne room. They haven't actually gone near enough past their tier 2 line for the past couple of minutes. It's Hati have had the freedom of the entire map to do as they wish, but this is the thing though, Haunting, is that we saw that just that one pick onto Narodi was a 70-second death timer. That does work the other way as well. If a bunch of Eedjiots can find another grasp of death, if Narodi can find something with the Palau as well, one pick could be what decides this as well. And the right-hand side bird may be where we see that happen. The wave clear comes out, just waiting for their wave to drop though. Hati do not want to push any further forward at least. Matthias on frontline duty just takes a lot of true damage from that tablet coming out. Everything is stacked at this point. There's stacks on stacks on stacks of items. Wave comes in, wave clear comes out. And this, once again, we dance.
This stacking and the amount of damage that's coming through from Hati, the poke is really important here, because on one side of the map, you've got an enhanced fire giant. So even if you're matching poke for poke by a bunch of Eedjiots, it doesn't really matter, because that's all coming back through that fire giant regen, which means that this siege can just be sustained for so much longer by Hati. And the fact that they have 2 Phoenixes down, stretching you a little bit thinner on your defense helps all the more.
Matthias going to go low, but the World Serpent will come out as well into the backline. The Grasp of Death once again connecting onto multiple members, but Zazola's got the first pick. The Palau pulls back 2, and a bunch of Eedjiots might have found 3 as their own. It's a 3 for 2. Zazola having a double kill, but Swedish will answers back with a double kill of himself. It's a 1 versus 2 left as Hati lose all 5 members. A bunch of Eedjiots, the Hail Mary works out for them. They deicide at the right-hand side Phoenix.
I feel like I have been nothing but critical all game of Narodi's Palaus, but I owe Narodi an apology for that one alone. If you're going to pull that out at the end of the game on the line, and potentially promotion on the line, because these are long respawn timers for Hardy right now, and you've got your ADC left on the map, able to chunk through these towers, chunk through these Phoenixes, that may have been the game-winning play, and Narodi was right at the middle of it. Great setup with the Grasp of Death. You potentially get a couple of beats there. You slow everyone down. You get a huge amount of damage out. Narodi goes in, pulls in 3, and then able to turn the damage around. And it's Swedish, it's Sammy, it's Neathank, able to lay down the killing blow on all of those members of Hati. Granted, unfortunately, they're not able to get any more than a couple of tier 2s, but they push those waves out. They've turned around this game state, and by getting that Oni Fury as well, there's going to be a lot of pressure on knocking on the doors of Hati, and with that Fire Giant coming up soon, TJ, as well, I think we've got ourselves a game again.
Wait, now we've got ourselves a game? It's 50 minutes of reporting.
And then Hardy made it not really a game anymore, and it's a game. I guess we're in overtime, right? Everything's on the line.
Oh my word. Okay. 50 minutes, a full Fire Giant dance to look forward to as well. Everything's all coming up TJ right now, as Hati wants to turn their attention towards it. The Grass of Death coming out very early, actually, onto ZFS Sparta, who is kind of stuck tanking this Fire Giant at least. But that is a crucial ultimate to go down. Matthias also lost the Cataclysm as well.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Oh, huge damage going down onto
Wow.
Tilly, but forcing out the World Serpent.
Yeah, is able to get away at least. But there's some semi-global presence gone. The left-hand side bird again is able to stand guard, but we know what happens when Swedish is able to free cast on that bird. That bird is gone, and now Tilly has to respawn. All of a sudden, Hati just being pulled apart here. They've got a threat onto their left-hand side Phoenix, and yes, they're going to back away. The Titan does take a little bit of chip damage from the minions as well. Tilly is at least there. Swedish rotates over to mid lane to keep the pressure on as well. Fire Giants possibly being denied by a bunch of Eedjiots as well. Swedish is actually able to return towards the mid lane. Looks like they want to recall at least, but they do have their ultimate. And now Hati, again, it's so tense. Haunting. Just one mistake, one wrong move could be the game.
It certainly could, and we've got those ultimates all back up. Cataclysm is available.
With depth up to 4 members. It's going to hit him in the Fire Giant pit, but Matthias goes down though. Fire Giant now to a quarter HP. Swedish is here. Defender of Olympus will come out as well. It's a very, very split fight. Neither team really engaging. The Palau came out as well. That's 2 more ultimates down, but Swedish has got the pick. Apple Toast has fallen, caught out to the left-hand side of the Fire Giant. The Merlin is down, and Fire Giant will now be started by a bunch of Eedjiots. Potentially.
Or will it? They look like they're not ready to commit without their support here, TJ. But all this time that's being bought, there are waves upon waves heading towards Hati's base. There's another fire wave coming down. And it looks like Hati are a little bit split on who it is that has to go back and defend these, as the team is pulled apart again.
4 members around this Fire Giant. 4 on 4. 5 minions pouring into that left-hand side Phoenix once again. So Zola is the one who recalls for it. Now having to deal with these Titan waves as well. It's only the minions, it's only a little bit of chip damage, but that's going to add up the longer that it is left. And now a bunch of Eedjiots, though, they sense weakness and they want to go for this engage.
They really do. I see Tilly dancing around here. Somewhat tanky, but we saw in those last couple of fights with the way that Swedish lays damage into this Yorm. It's not going to be enough if they get a pick onto this Yorm.
Yeah, Hati doing such a good job at just keeping them at arm's length as well. Just letting a bunch of Eedjiots kind of just like flail underneath the arm because they can't engage right now. ZFS Sparta going very close. Confound onto Matthias as well. But it's just kind of delaying them. It's forcing a bunch of Eedjiots to look both ways. They either commit to the fight or commit to the Fire Giants. Meanwhile, Apple Toast has come back off spawn and dealt with the minions as well. Tilly very far forward. But it's times like this, Haunting, that we look towards the pace setters. Narodi has done it once. Nightank has done it once again. Can they do it for a second time? Or do we have another unsung member for either of these teams?
The thing that I'm looking at right here, TJ, for this fight is in 20 seconds, Azul has beads again. And really, that's going to be the thing that helps decide this, because both the things that you've looked at with Narodi and Neathank, those can be taken or mitigated with beads. And so if Zazol is able to sustain through this, we've seen Zazol really go on a tear through these fights once those crucial tools are down. And it may be that time has come again for Zazol to be the one to step up, although with the members searching, it looks like this is going to be an assassination attempt on that ADC.
They're going to go towards the Shablan. He's got beats. He's got Aegis to Grass of Death onto ZFS Sparta. They're going to go look towards that Athena, but Defender of Olympus out. Full retreat from Hati. Less than half HP, but a rollout from Matthias. No ultimate, but a shockwave onto 2 Apple Toast. Very low as well. Toby caught out, and Toby will go down. And now Narodi making the plays once again. Tilly is here. What can they do? That's a nice double knock up onto the back line, but Sweet is just pouring damage into it. And the World Serpent can't go off in time. A bunch of Eedjiots might have actually just snuck this game away from Hati.
That was such a great engage. It pulled the fight apart. They were able to get rid of the damage dealers, and everything that Hati could do to protect them came out. We saw Heroism come out. We saw both relics come out. We saw Magi's Shelter came out, and a bunch of Eedjiots fought through all of those protective
the
things.
Titan. They're gonna go for it. A bunch of Eedjiots want to end this game. You can see the HP dropping. It's just Toast and Sparta. The Aggressive Death goes wide, but they're looking to pass the stats. Sammy pushes them back underneath the tower. Appletoast just get at least one. The Titan starting to wail the damage down at least. Who is tanking it? But no, the HP is just too low to deal with. It's a double kill for Appletoast, but a bunch of Eedjiots do not care. They take the Titan. They take the game, and they take promotion to the Valhalla League.
Well, for a bunch of Eedjiots, there are so many takeaways from that game that they can take with them into their promotion. First of all, they should take the momentum from it. They've got to be feeling an emotional high after a game like that really came down to the wire. They were almost looking at a game 3 more than once, and instead they were able to turn that around and turn it into a victory. Take away that mental fortitude as well. When you're looking at these harder games in the division above, that's going to come far in value and in so much value for you as a bunch of Eedjiots. Having the ability to take these long games, to take these losing situations, to hang on and to claw your way back into the game. And then we just saw some really solid plays from this team. I think Matthias, for me, stands out as a really crucial member of this squad moving forwards.
Yeah,
And
Matthias, as I said, yeah, just kind of, again, game number 1, absolutely lights out. Clinic on Geb. You want to watch how to play Geb? You watch Matthias in that game number 1. That's how you play Geb. But in that game 2, Matthias found themselves, we spoke about it in the cast, pull between, am I engaging? Am I peeling? Like, what am I doing here? And just being able to pull apart the Geb, quite literally, the Geb will crumble. But in the later stages of that team fight, Matthias found his role once again, all of a sudden, and then that Geb performance comes out, and it's been pointed out to us by Judas on production as well. I don't think I have ever seen that many wards placed. ZFS Sparta with 50 wards dropped in that one. My hat goes off to you, my friend.
Or we can't see. But Bracer, of course, also being an important part of that too.
Yeah, true. And, they were getting, the Bracer was being dropped quite liberally as well. But still, just 50 wards being dropped. Actually, just across the board. I think everyone gets a bit of a round of applause for their warding, double digits near enough across everyone. So, yeah, you passed the ward test. But anyway, the dust finally settles on that set. It was, I believe, was it 24 minutes, 25 minutes for game number 1?
And more than double that for game number 2.
And yeah, 27 minutes, thank you, Judas. And 55 minutes for game number 2. But a bunch of Eedjiots secure themselves promotion to the Valhalla League. Commiserations to Hati Haunting. I gotta touch on them for a little bit because they were doing so much right in that decisive game, and we were really thinking as well that we were hoping that they can pull it back and maybe we do get to see that game 3. But a bunch of Eedjiots
able to hang on.
Yeah, hang on and claw it back. Heroic plays. Haunting, I must ask you though, MVP.
I'm gonna make the job harder for you, TJ, when it comes to picking your MVP, because I'm gonna take Matthias here. I think game 1 alone was such a solid performance from this support, and supports are the unsung heroes of Smite for a lot of the games that we're in. So Matthias, for me, walks away the MVP for performance in game number 1, and then the start and the end of game number 2. It got a little rocky there for the Geb in the middle of game number 3, game number 2, but able to really make the most of it as the game ended. And for me, clear standout player on this squad.
Yeah, you really have. I mean, Matthias definitely would have been my immediate go-to for MVP here. I think for me though, it's a toss-up between Narodi had such an amazing game number 1 on that 4, and then just some of the plays happening on that Darji early on just kind of soured that a little bit. But fantastic performance as well. Nitak might be my pick for just being consistent. You know, they came up huge when they were needed. They were pumping damage out, getting a lot of value out. 6-1 and 10 as well in a game with that many kills. Pretty impressive as well. But their grasp of deaths were truly game changing in that one.
Absolutely. I think we'll pull it back down to that right hand side Phoenix, Grasp of Death, Powwow. The fight that I think turns the entire game.
Yeah.
And for those heroics coming up in the clutch when it matters, I think a really respectable decision to give it to Neat Hank there.
Brilliant. Well, that is going to do it for today's set between a bunch of Eedjiots and Hati. GG, very well played to both of these teams. I could not imagine what it was like in the comms after 54 minutes. And then watching that Titan fall down, that must have been absolutely mental. But it has been an absolute pleasure to bring this set to you all. Huge thank you to all the players and the teams who are being involved, and also to us on the talent team. So, you know, it's great to be casting with Haunting once again. I look forward to when we shed a mic once more. To Judas for being responsible for, you know, so you can hear us and you can see us, and some fantastic spectating work as well. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time for some more Smite Night Conquest League action. Take care and good night.